There are nights in Boston when the rain doesn't just fall, it punishes the city, cold, relentless. The kind of rain that empties streets and turns every shadow into a threat. On one such night, Raven Kane stood beneath the faded green awning of a shuttered bookstore on Charles Street. Beige trench coat turned up against the wind, dark hair damp at the edges. She looked exactly like what she had spent 12 years trying to become. An ordinary woman waiting for an ordinary ride, nothing more, nothing less. She had buried the ghost so deep that even she sometimes forgot the woman who once moved through war zones like smoke and left no witnesses. Now she taught archival history at a quiet community college. She graded papers. She drank tea. She tried to forget the weight of every life she had taken in the name of duty. But the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. The black van came out of nowhere. It jumped the curb with a violent splash of grey water, doors already sliding open before it fully stopped. 2 men spilled out. Broad shoulders, cheap leather, the stink of stale cigarettes and cheaper cologne. Marcus Vale was the talker. "Grab her! Shut her up!" Rough hands clamped over her mouth. A thick arm locked around her waist. They expected panic. They expected screaming, thrashing, begging. Raven gave them just enough of it to sell the illusion. She let her body go limp and frantic at the right moments, playing the terrified civilian perfectly, while her mind stayed ice-cold. She catalogued the van's make, the route they were taking, the weight of the zip ties biting into her wrists. They threw her into the back like discarded luggage. A burlap sack slammed over her head, plunging her into darkness. "Got the bitch," Marcus laughed as the van accelerated. "Lila Kane, boss is going to be very happy tonight." Under the sack, Raven's breathing never changed. Lila Kane. Her younger sister. The beautiful, reckless, magnetic disaster who had spent her entire life living in the shadow of a sister who was never allowed to exist. Raven closed her eyes beneath the hood. For one quiet second, a dark thought passed through her mind. Maybe I deserve this. But what none of them realized was that they hadn't kidnapped a helpless socialite. They had just dragged the most dangerous woman in Boston out of retirement. And the ghost had been sleeping very lightly. The drive lasted exactly 42 minutes. Raven counted every turn, every change in road texture, every shift in the air that smelled increasingly of salt and rotting kelp. They were heading north along the old industrial stretch near Chelsea Creek, abandoned textile mills, forgotten warehouses, the perfect place to make someone disappear. The van finally lurched to a stop. Rough hands dragged her out by the shoulders. She let her knees buckle on purpose, hitting the cold concrete hard enough to draw a weak, pathetic cry from her throat, the kind Lila would make. "Get her in the chair," Marcus barked. They slammed her into a rusted metal folding chair. A second zip tie cinched around her ankles, bolting her to the front legs. She heard the heavy corrugated steel door roll shut behind them, sealing the warehouse like a tomb. Now they waited. The silence inside that vast, freezing space was suffocating. Water dripped somewhere in the rafters. A single halogen work light buzzed overhead, casting long, ugly shadows across the oil-stained floor. Raven sat perfectly still beneath the burlap hood. She could feel their eyes on her, nervous, uncertain. Marcus kept pacing. The other man, Frank, lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "She ain't screaming," Marcus muttered, a flicker of unease creeping into his voice. He nudged her hip with his boot. "Hey, princess, you still breathing in there?" Raven let out a soft, muffled whimper, high-pitched trembling, exactly like her sister would sound. Frank laughed nervously from across the room. "Probably still in shock. Wait till the boss sees her. He's going to have fun breaking that pretty little socialite." Raven said nothing. Inside her chest, 2 versions of herself were fighting a silent war. The teacher who wanted to stay hidden. The ghost who already knew how this night would end. She rotated her left wrist slightly, feeling the parallel zip ties. Amateur work. With a quiet, practiced twist, she dislocated her thumb. The pain flared bright and white behind her eyes, but she didn't flinch. She collapsed her hand, slipped it free, then quietly popped the joint back into place. She was loose. She could end this right now. But she didn't. Not yet. But what none of them realized was that she was giving them one last chance to survive their own mistake. The heavy steel door screeched open. Headlights from a sleek silver Mercedes cut through the gloom. Expensive leather shoes clicked across the concrete, slow, measured, deliberate. 2 bodyguards followed, their footsteps heavy and synchronized. Marcus's voice cracked with forced confidence. "Mr. Cross, sir. We got her, just like you wanted. Grabbed her right off Charles Street. Clean." The footsteps stopped directly in front of Raven. A long, heavy silence stretched. "Take the hood off," a low, resonant voice commanded. Rough hands yanked the burlap away. Raven blinked once against the harsh light, then lifted her head and looked straight into the eyes of Damien Cross. He was younger than she expected. Mid-30s, sharp, aristocratic features, dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than most people's homes. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Icy blue, intelligent, and currently narrowing with growing suspicion. He studied her face, her posture, the complete absence of tears. Marcus shifted nervously. "Boss, that's Lila Kane. We double-checked." "No," Damien said softly, dangerously quiet. "That is not Lila Kane." He crouched down slowly until he was eye-level with her, close enough that she could smell cedarwood, bergamot, and the faint metallic trace of gun oil. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low. Raven met his gaze without flinching. Her spine stayed straight. Her hazel eyes were calm, almost curious. "My name is Raven Kane," she said evenly. "Lila's older sister. And right now, you have a choice, Mr. Cross." The temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus laughed, a shaky, nervous sound. "What the hell is this? Boss, she's tied to a chair. She's bluffing." Raven didn't look at Marcus. She kept her eyes locked on Damien. "Untie me now," she continued, voice soft but carrying through the entire space, "and I will walk out of here. No one has to die tonight." "But if you keep me here, if you involve me in whatever mess my sister created, then the man who walks out of this warehouse will not be the same man who walked in." Damien stared at her for a long moment. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock her. Instead, something shifted behind those icy eyes. Recognition. Respect. And the faintest trace of unease. But what none of them realized was that the woman they had kidnapped wasn't just dangerous. She was trying, with every last ounce of willpower she had left, not to become what she once was. And they were running out of time to let her stay human. The silence that followed Raven's warning was heavier than the chains they had tried to put on her. Damien Cross remained crouched in front of her, icy blue eyes searching her face like a man reading a loaded gun. For the first time in many years, he looked uncertain. Marcus laughed again. Too loud, too forced. "Boss, she's just trying to scare us. She's tied to a damn chair." Damien didn't answer. He was still watching Raven, watching the way she breathed, the way she sat, the way her hazel eyes held his without a single flicker of fear. Then the heavy steel door of the warehouse exploded. The blast was deafening. A concussive wave of heat and shrapnel ripped through the space. Concrete dust and smoke swallowed everything. Damien dove behind a rusted industrial lathe. His 2 bodyguards drew their weapons but were cut down instantly by a storm of suppressed automatic gunfire. "Victor Drago!" Marcus screamed, firing blindly into the smoke. "It's the Russians!" A dozen black-clad figures poured through the shattered doorway. Victor Drago's elite hit squad, moving with military precision. They had come to end Damien Cross tonight and take the ledger by force. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through the air. Men shouted in Russian. The warehouse became a slaughterhouse of muzzle flashes and screams. Raven sat perfectly still in a metal chair as bullets whipped past her. Blood from one of Damien's bodyguards spattered across her trench coat. She didn't flinch. She didn't scream. Inside her chest, the war she had tried to bury for 12 years finally broke free. Her breathing changed first. Slow. Deliberate. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds out. Then her eyes went cold. The teacher disappeared. The ghost opened her eyes. With a sharp twist, she finished freeing her second hand. The zip ties fell away like broken promises. She reached down, snapped the ankle tie with one brutal motion, and rose from the chair like a shadow detaching from the wall. But what none of them realized was that the ghost hadn't woken up that night. She had never truly gone to sleep. Raven moved through the smoke like death wearing human skin. A Russian operative swept his rifle toward Damien's position. He never saw her coming. She slid low, gripped the barrel of his rifle, and drove the heel of her palm upward under his chin with surgical force. The man's neck snapped back with a wet crack. He dropped before his rifle hit the floor. Raven caught the weapon mid-fall, spun it smoothly against her chest, and fired 2 precise suppressed shots. 2 more men dropped with perfect holes between their eyes. Damien, crouched behind the lathe, watched in stunned silence as the woman he had kidnapped dismantled an elite kill team like she was grading mediocre essays. She wasn't fighting for survival. She was erasing threats. 3 more Russians rushed her position. Raven dropped the empty rifle, stepped inside the first man's guard, parried his knife thrust, and shattered his sternum with a brutal elbow strike. As he folded, she took his sidearm, pivoted, and fired over her own shoulder without looking. The second man took a bullet to the throat. The third hesitated. Just for a heartbeat. That hesitation killed him. Raven closed the distance, grabbed him by the vest, swept his legs, and used his falling body as a human shield against the next burst of gunfire. She fired twice through his chest, dropping the shooter behind him. The remaining attackers began to back away, their professional discipline cracking against the sheer terror of the woman moving through them like a nightmare they couldn't outrun. Raven's voice cut through the ringing silence, calm, almost bored. "Tell Victor Drago the ghost is awake." And she is extremely irritated by the interruption. The last 4 men broke. They ran. Raven didn't chase them immediately. She weighed the tactical choice for 1 cold second, then raised the pistol and executed 2 precise shots, dropping the fastest runners. The others she let flee into the rain. A message, not mercy. The warehouse fell into a ringing, bloody quiet. Damien Cross slowly stood up from behind the lathe, his custom pistol still in his hand, though he hadn't fired a single shot in the last 30 seconds. His immaculate suit was dusted with concrete and blood that wasn't his. He stared at Raven. She stood in the center of the carnage, trenchcoat ruined, face spattered with other men's blood, breathing steady, eyes still cold. For the first time in his life, Damien Cross felt something dangerously close to awe and fear. "You could have run in the chaos," he said quietly. Raven wiped blood from her cheek with the back of her hand. "I told you what would happen if you kept me here," she replied, voice flat. "Now we have a bigger problem. My sister has something both you and Victor Drago want, an encrypted ledger, and if we don't find her first, this city is going to burn." Damien holstered his weapon. His icy blue eyes never left hers. "Then it seems we have a temporary alliance, Miss Kane." Raven looked at the bodies around her, then back at the man who had ordered her kidnapping. She didn't smile. She didn't agree. She simply said, "Cross me, and I will finish what I started here tonight." But what none of them realized was that the woman who had tried so desperately to disappear had just reminded the entire underworld why some ghosts should never be summoned. The penthouse at the top of the cross tower was a fortress of sterile luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a rain-lashed Boston skyline that glittered like broken glass. Inside, everything was dark leather, brushed steel, and silence. Raven Kane stepped out of the guest bathroom wrapped in a black robe Damien had provided. Steen followed her. Her dark hair was still damp, the fresh stitches on her right bicep pulled tight beneath the sleeve, but she didn't favor the arm. She never showed weakness. Damien Cross stood at the massive granite island, sleeves rolled up, watching her with those icy blue eyes. A glass of Macallan 18 and a fully stocked medical kit waited on the counter. His right-hand man, Dominic Russo, a massive, tattooed enforcer, stood behind him like a loaded weapon. "You clean up well for someone who just painted a warehouse red," Damien said quietly. Raven walked over, ignored the whiskey, and began re-cleaning the gash on her arm with clinical detachment. She poured iodine straight into the wound without a single flinch. Dominic muttered under his breath, "Jesus Christ!" Raven didn't look up. "Your men are sloppy, Cross. Amateur zip ties. No secondary restraints. If I had wanted you dead in that warehouse, you would have been the first one on the floor." Damien's lips curved, not quite a smile. "And yet here we are, alive, talking." She tied off the last suture with a sharp tug and finally met his gaze. "We're talking because my sister stole something dangerous from you, an encrypted ledger, the kind of thing that can bury empires. Victor Drago wants it. You want it. And right now my idiot sister is caught in the middle." Damien leaned against the island, studying her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "And what do you want, Raven Kane?" She picked up the whiskey glass, took one slow sip, then set it down. "I want my sister alive. I want to go back to my quiet life. And I want you to understand something very clearly." She stepped closer, invading his space the way only someone who had killed in silence could. "I am not your soldier. I am not your asset. And if you try to control me the way you control everyone else in this city, I will remind you exactly why they once called me the Ghost." The air between them crackled, sharp, dangerous, electric. Dominic's hand twitched toward his gun. Damien raised one finger without looking away from Raven. Dominic froze. "I don't control ghosts," Damien said softly. "I negotiate with them." He tapped a key on the multi-monitor setup. Grainy traffic cam footage appeared. A woman in an oversized hoodie slipping into the Starlight Motel 2 hours earlier. The rose tattoo on her neck was unmistakable. "Your sister is there," panicked, looking over her shoulder. "But Victor Drago's daughter Anya is already hunting her. We have maybe an hour before they find her." Raven stared at the screen, jaw tight. "Then we move, quietly. 2 people, civilian car, no teens, no noise." Dominic scoffed. "Boss, you're not seriously thinking of going yourself." "That's what you pay me for." Raven turned her head slowly toward Dominic. Her voice dropped to something low and chilling. "If you send a team, my sister dies before your men reach the door. Anya Drago is FSB trained. The second she hears boots, she puts a bullet in Lila's head and burns the drive. So yes, he is coming with me." Damien watched the exchange with dark fascination. No one spoke to Dominic like that and lived, yet here Raven was, calm, unafraid, rewriting the rules in his own penthouse. He straightened his cuffs. "Fine, we do it your way. But understand this, Ghost. If your sister tries to play both sides, I won't hesitate." Raven met his eyes without blinking. "And if you try to use me as bait or leverage, I won't hesitate either." A long, heavy silence stretched between them. 2 apex predators measuring each other, deciding whether to hunt together or tear each other apart. But what none of them realized was that the reluctant alliance they were forming in that penthouse would change the balance of power in Boston forever. Raven picked up a fresh black tactical jacket Dominic had brought. "Let's go get my sister before she gets us all killed." Damien slipped on his own coat, a predator's smile touching the corner of his mouth. "After you, Miss Kane." As they stepped into the private elevator, the city lights blurred past the glass walls. Raven stared straight ahead, jaw set. Inside her chest, the old voice whispered, "If I become the Ghost again tonight, I might not come back this time." She pushed the thought down. For now. The grey Audi sliced through the rain like a blade. Raven sat in the passenger seat, loading a suppressed Sig Sauer with mechanical precision. Damien drove with focused aggression, the V8 engine growling beneath them. Neither spoke much. The silence between them was sharp. 2 dangerous people who had just agreed to hunt together while still measuring each other for weaknesses. "Starlight Motel," Damien said quietly. "Room 1114. Back corner." Raven checked the magazine. "If Anya is already there, we do this my way. Silent entry, no heroics. My sister is reckless, not invincible." Damien glanced at her. "And if she tries to run the ledger for herself?" Raven's jaw tightened. "Then I fix my Thanos mistake, the way I always have." They parked 2 blocks away under a rusted overpass and moved on foot through the downpour, hoods up, shadows in the night. When they reached the peeling door of room 114, Raven pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing, no television, no air conditioning, just the faint whistle of wind through a broken window. "We're too late," she whispered. She didn't kick the door. She drove her heel into the lock with controlled violence. The cheap wood splintered. Damien swept in first, pistol raised. Raven followed like smoke. The room was destroyed, clothes scattered, suitcase overturned, and across the floral wallpaper, written in fresh, dripping blood, "Checkmate." Raven knelt by the shattered back window. A delicate silver necklace with a diamond L lay in the puddle of rainwater, still warm. She picked it up, fingers tightening until the chain bit into her palm. Damien's voice was low behind her. "Anya!" Raven stood slowly. The woman who had tried so hard to stay human was gone. What remained was cold, focused, and terrifyingly calm. "Call Dominic," she said. "Wake every asset you have. We're going to Vanguard Cold Storage. That's where they took her." Damien studied her face, the blood, the rain, the absolute certainty in her eyes. "You're going to war for a sister who resents you?" Raven looked at him, hazel eyes burning with something ancient and painful. "She's still my sister, even if she hates me for disappearing." The freezer Vanguard. Cold storage loomed like a concrete tomb beside the harbor, while Damien's men launched a loud, violent assault on the front gates. Flashbangs, gunfire, chaos. Raven and Damien slipped in through the freezing black water of the private dock. They moved like predators who had hunted together for years. Inside the sub-zero labyrinth of hanging carcasses and frost-covered pipes, they followed the trail of fear. Then they heard her. Lila's voice, shrill, desperate, entitled, echoing from the deepest insulated chamber. "I told you I don't have the physical drive on me. I left it in a locker. If you kill me, you get nothing." "Anya." Drago's smooth, accented reply was ice cold. "You will give me the combination, little bird, or I start removing fingers." Raven didn't hesitate. She kicked the heavy insulated door open with terrifying force. The scene inside was brutal. Lila bound to a metal chair, face bruised, mascara running. Anya Drago in a pristine white suit, knife in hand. Two enforcers flanking her. Raven stepped into the harsh fluorescent light, pistol raised. "Nobody is taking anyone's fingers tonight." Anya's eyes widened with recognition, and something like dark respect. "So the ghost is real," she whispered. The fight was fast, vicious, and symbolic. Anya was younger, ambitious, ruthless, a mirror of what Raven had once been. Experience versus hunger. Raven disarmed the first enforcer with brutal efficiency. Damien dropped the second with 3 precise shots. Anya lunged with the knife. Raven sidestepped, caught her wrist, and slammed her against a rack of frozen meat. The knife clattered away. Raven pressed her pistol to Anya's forehead. For a long second, the two women stared at each other, past self and present self. "I know what you become if you keep going down this path," Raven said quietly. "Walk away. Tell your father the ghost erased his best chance tonight. And if he comes for my family again, I will come for him." Anya fled into the storm. Raven cut her sister free. Lila looked up, eyes wide with a messy storm of emotions. Relief, resentment, shame. "You came," she whispered. Raven's voice was cold but steady. "I always come, even when you make it impossible." Lila tried to hug her. Raven stepped back. "You stole the ledger to save yourself," Raven said. "You dragged me back into this life because you couldn't clean up your own mess. I'm not here to save you, Lila. I'm here to fix what you broke." She pressed a plane ticket, cash, and the necklace into her sister's hands. "Tonight, one-way flight. You don't come back to Boston. Ever. If you do, I won't come next time." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You disappeared on me. You left me to survive alone." Raven's voice cracked for the first time all night, just barely. "And I've been paying for that every single day since. Go, live a life that doesn't need monsters to save it." Lila stood there a moment longer, then ran into the rain without looking back. Raven and Damien stood alone in the blood-stained freezer as the distant sounds of battle faded. Damien offered his hand. "You don't have to disappear again," he said. "Boston could use someone like you. I could use someone like you." Raven looked at his hand for a long time. She didn't take it, but she also didn't walk away. "I'm not sure the ghost is done yet," she whispered. "But if I stay, it won't be as your weapon, Damien. It will be as your equal, or not at all." Damien lowered his hand, a rare, dangerous smile touching his lips. "Then let's see what kind of empire two monsters can build." Raven looked out into the stormy harbor, where the rain was finally beginning to wash the blood from the concrete. She had tried to live a quiet life. She had tried to become human again. But the world doesn't let monsters retire. She tried to disappear. She tried to teach history instead of making it. She tried to bury the ghost. But they kidnapped the wrong woman, and in doing so, they dragged the most dangerous shadow in Boston back into the light. Because sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one who is trying hardest to disappear, and once she wakes up, empires fall. This is Veiled Flame. Follow for more stories where the quiet ones win.